Hello, my name's Hayden, and welcome to another FJX 2000 production. On the forums, I'm FJX 2000, if you know me from there. But today, I'm going to be working on my Toyota FJ Cruiser in preparation for getting my long travel setup completed. Today, we're going to be installing, or trying to install, some extended rear brake lines on the rear suspension in preparation for the long travel. And hopefully we can get that done. I'm by no means a mechanic. I'm just gonna try my best and record it. I didn't find a whole lot of info on it on YouTube, so this is for you, YouTube. Now some of you may be wondering, what's long travel? Well, in this case, it's part of the Metal Tech 4x4 rear long travel kit for the FJ Cruiser. They developed this kit a few years ago, so that way you could get the full range of articulation possible from the stock setup of the FJ Cruiser's suspension setup. It incorporates having longer shocks designed specifically for the kit, as well as having specifically designed rear long travel coils that'll enable the rear axle to get its full range of travel. There's also a few other components we'll go over with the kit, but today, like I said, we're going to be installing the extended rear brake lines. So let's take a look at that real quick. Here we are underneath the rear of the FJ Cruiser. You can see this is the rear axle, and you can see that Panhard bar from ResFab. I also have the rest of the ResFab rear link set up, the upper and lower links. But here we're going to zoom in and kind of take a look at these rear brake lines. So right there you can see those brake lines. They connect up here, they go down, they curve, and then they come back right here where they mount onto the axle itself. The problem with long travel is when this axle drops down, it can extend too far, and you have the possibility of tearing these stock length brake lines. So the manufacturers, they developed longer rear brake lines to compensate for this extended travel that you gain from the long travel rear suspension setup. So today we're going to be going ahead and disconnecting these lines. We're going to remove the mounts so that way we can just take this inside and work on it. We're going to attach the new rear brake lines that are stainless steel, and then we'll hopefully get to put it back on, bleed the brakes, and we should be done. Alright, so some of the parts you'll need are, of course, the extended rear brake lines. These are actually the ones from Low Range Off-Road. I was at the 2013 FJ Summit, and during the raffle, you know, they throw things out for free and whatnot. And I actually ended up getting these extended rear brake lines for free. So that worked out perfect for this occasion. And I have a couple other tools like these flare wrenches. You need like a bleeder kit or some way to bleed your brakes. And of course, when we lose some brake fluid, we're gonna have to replace it. So I have some DOT or DOT3 brake fluid. I just chose Lucas since I know they have good products and I trust them. And we'll need some other stuff, a jack and whatnot. So let's go ahead and collect those parts. As you can probably see, there's this huge pile of stuff in my driveway right now, and the garage is kind of all taken apart since we've been doing a pretty big project as of late. I'm by no means a YouTuber, like I make YouTube videos, but I don't depend on it for a living or anything. So trying to find the parts that we need is going to be a little tough. But one of the things you want to make sure is that you have some sort of way to capture the brake fluid as it gets released from the brake lines when we disconnect those. Brake fluid is kind of a really harsh stuff. You want to make sure that you wipe it up if it gets on anything. It'll eat through plastic or paint, eats into metal. Not very fun stuff. So make sure that you have some shop towels or something to catch whatever brake fluid kind of spills. Here we go. So in the meantime, between the last time you saw me and now, I've jacked up the FJ from the frame. I'm not going to show you how I jacked it up just because my setup is really janky right now. Make sure to like and subscribe and watch a bunch of my videos so that way I can make a little more money and buy a proper jack to do this with. Right now it's like the jankiest setup of all time. But anyways, you jack it up from the frame so that way the axle stays low, but you lift it up so that way you have better access to the brake lines and they're not as bended as much. This way it just makes life easier. So right now we're gonna take this flange, whatever it's called. They're called, oh sorry, flare nut set, this flare wrench, and we're going to undo the brake lines. No going back now. This is a 10 millimeter. I'm sure you could use like a regular wrench, but someone recommended using a flare one for this, so here we go. We're going to use this instead. Alright, so here we go. As you can see, I've put towels all over, so that way any brake fluid that leaks will hopefully not make as much contact with painted parts or plastics as much. And I've also put a bucket down below, so that way if there's a bit that spills out, it's not too bad. But we're just going to put this flange wrench on there, or flare wrench, sorry. Put this flare wrench, and let's give her a twist. The flare wrenches are a little better for this kind of thing since they make more points of contact and treat it a little bit nicer. It's a little hard to work with these springs right there, but it's coming out pretty nicely. Not too bad at all. Yeah, the long travel is nice because it enables the vehicle to off-road, and with increased articulation your tires are more likely to be on the ground at all times, and if all your tires are on the ground then you have more traction, and when you're using stuff like your rear diff lock or your A-track, then you're going to be gaining more traction and you're less likely to be in those more precarious three-wheel only situations while off-roading, and it makes it better all around. I've always wanted the long travel setup, so I'm glad I'm finally getting this done. Yeah, you want to make sure that before you install your long travel coils that you replace your rear brake lines. Because if you get it to the point where you're getting that extra articulation before you do your brake lines, then you could very well bust one of these, and that would be a not fun day on the trail. We'll just fast forward this to the point where I have these off. Alright, welcome back. So as you can probably see, I've stuffed a bunch of towels up here to try and soak up that brake fluid that's dripping down. You can see it's dripping down right there, but I realized that I was just spitting this and it was already all the way loose. All you had to do is lift it up and out of that and set it off to the side. Then you're good to go. Same with the bottom. I was able to undo the bottom real quick, and that just slides down, this part that you unscrew, and then all you have to do is pull it out of there, this little flange part, and then that one's loose. Now we're gonna do the other one, the one that goes to the right rear wheel, and then we'll be able to move on to the next step. Alright, so I was able to undo both ends of the right one. I've just stuffed tons of paper towels up there because, as you can see, both of them are still leaking to some extent, some brake fluid. This lower one though, it's hard to kind of get wedged out of its position with the way that it is. So this bolt right here that comes along the line, I've just undone that one. I've loosened it up a bit. It only needs a couple more turns. There we go. And now with that one loose, you can see we were able to just pull that out of its socket, and now we're ready to remove those brake lines entirely. The way that we're going to do that is we're going to undo this bolt right here, which that's the mount for the bottom one, and then for the top ones there's a bolt up there too, which we're going to grab, and once we undo those two bolts we'll be able to remove those brake lines. We'll switch out with the new ones and then we'll get moving on. So right here you can see we're at the rear diff. This is the bolt that we have to undo. I've loosened it up quite a bit. All I have to do is give it a couple more turns. And now that one's loose. And with this whole apparatus loose, we can remove that side of the brake lines we just have to undo this little clip so that way we can release this line. Looks like that might be a wheel speed sensor, ABS sensor, something, so we'll have to undo that little clip, but once that one's free, then we'll be able to remove the bottom thing entirely. Alright gang, so we were successful. I was able to undo the bottom bolt and the top bolt and then remove this brake line assembly altogether, complete with the mounts. Now we'll be able to take this inside and switch it out for these extended rear brake lines while not being under the confined area of the car. One thing that I did run into that I should have foreseen was that the previous owner of this FJ Cruiser actually had at one point the Rough Country 6-inch lift. And one of the components that comes with that kit is, I don't know if you can see it, I kind of put a funnel right there to help funnel the dripping brake lines. Let me adjust real quick. Alright, so if you look right over there, right in the place where it would have originally mounted, you can actually see that there's like this little brace that comes out from the frame to where the mounting spot is. And that is a brace that comes with the Rough Country 6-inch lift. So that way you don't have the same kind of tearing issues that would happen, but I just did not expect that that would be there, since the previous owner eventually put this back down to a 3-inch lift versus it being the 6-inch lift. But apparently they left that little relic from the past on there. So it was a little rusty and a little hard to get off, but I got the one bolt off. I think what I'm gonna do is undo the bolt where the brakes is mounted up over there. So that way I can just bolt it back directly to the frame versus it being on that little janky extender, in a sense. All right, so I'm inside the garage with our brake line. This right here was the top mount. It mounted up like this, and our bottom mount kind of mounted something like this. So this is kind of the normal arrangement of those brake lines. You can tell this is the bottom one because this is the one that had the brake or the ABS sensor line that clips in there, or whatever that line was. And so that one will be the one on the axle. This one's the one on the frame. So what we're gonna have to do is pull off these clips that attach into the bracket, so that way we can remove these brake lines, and then we'll be able to install our extended length ones. Let's open that up and take a look at kind of the length difference between the two. Like I said, these are from Low Range Off-Road. There's lots of different manufacturers who make extended length ones, but these are just the ones that I got for free, like I explained. So we can see in the kit, well, it says that they're 20 inches long, and they come with these nice little clips. They come with the brake lines themselves, and we can see right here just how much longer it is. Here, if we can kind of lay that out. So this will mount somewhere like in that. You can see just how much longer that cable is, that brake line. So that'll be perfect for our long travel. That way we can get a lot more range of travel and not have to worry about one of these breaking. So let's get to finding out how we remove these. All right, I was just able to put on one of these, so I think I kind of have an idea of how it works now. So I was able to do this one, so I'll do this one for you guys. That way you can see how this works. So I took some needle nose pliers, and you can see there's kind of this clip that sits right here in the mount. I just squeeze that, and I start pulling around. You can see the clip is starting to come out. Just like that, the clip is removed. Now you can remove the line. And so now this line is completely removed. You might want to clean up the hole a little bit, so that way it makes for a clean mounting surface for the new hardware. We'll wipe that off real quick. And now we take the other end of the line, and you can see how it's kind of has that shape to it. and that's sort of the same shape that we see on this metal section. So what we're going to do is we're going to stick this metal part, the hose, right up through there, and only that far. So with this brand, with this version, you want it just to stick where this metal plate is. You want just that skinnier of the two metal plates on the brake line to stick through. Once you do that, you're going to want to stick the provided clip on the underside right there to go in that groove that is between the two metal plates. So that way it can't go too far through the hole. It only goes a certain ways through. You just clip that on like that, stick it through. Once it's in the hole, then you reinstall that factory clip right into the place where it was before. In this case, we'll just make sure this is all the way in there. We push this through. Looks like it's nice and seated in there properly, so we can push it the rest of the way through and kind of give it a tap to get it to set the rest of the way. But now you can see that the clip has gone in that groove underneath, so now that can't go forwards or backwards. It's nice and mounted in there. And so that's one of the two. Look at that difference between the length and the lines. No wonder you need new ones for long travel. So now I'm going to do this other one off camera, and then we'll go back to reinstalling these mounts. I decided I'd show you just one more time how to do this, just in case. This part right here was the part that no instructions really ever made super clear to me. So this was the part I was the most worried about, but luckily it wasn't that hard. I will say that on the lower mount, the part that mounts to the axle, that one was a lot tougher to get these new hoses into, just because of the shape of the hole you have to put it through. It made it a little tougher. This upper one that mounts to the frame, it's a lot easier. It's a lot more similarly shaped to the way that the hose fittings are shaped, kind of that weird octagon or whatever shape that is. So anyways, we'll put this back in there and we'll be on our way. So again, I put this clip on already in that lower groove right there. You leave the upper groove. You stick the hose through the mount. You get it so it's all lined up for you, just like that. It can't go any further if you put that clip on there first. You stick it all the way through that you can. You remember the way that the clip was originally oriented, and you just put it back in that same way. Already you can kind of see how the clip is sliding into that groove on either side of the hose right there. And so you can kind of use your finger to get that in a ways, or you can give it a little tap. And eventually you'll get it down to the point where it's past that little groove and you know it's as far as it can go. And we can check it out. We can ensure that it's nice and seated inside that groove, so that way it can't move either way. And just like that, we have our new brake lines installed. So now comes the part where we actually go and install these on the FJ. Now comes the part where we reinstall our brackets. We're back underneath the FJ. Right here you can see where the upper mount will mount. You can see our upper brake lines coming down. And down here on the axle, you can see the lower brake lines. And we're going to be mounting right here into this hole for the lower bracket. And just to do a shout out to ResFab, you can kind of see how they are like one of the only manufacturers I know who they make their upper links kind of offset. You can see how it kind of comes out not directly centered with where the bolt is for where it bolts in it. It's set up so that way when it drops down, you're not going to make contact with the gas tank here. One of their nice designs. They also do an offset on the lower links as well. And then I also have their Panhard bar installed. It's a pretty sweet setup. I'm excited to get these brake lines in, to get the new coils in, because these are just the old man emu ones. And then soon we'll be able to be rocking the long travel. I actually already have the shocks in as well, and I also have the drop bracket that you put onto the bump stop, so that way it's not going up too far or extending too far. So all we need to do is these brakes, and then in a couple days I'm going to get those rear shocks, or I mean the rear coils installed, and then the long travel will be done. So let's get these brake lines reinstalled. You'll see how it has this little tab right there, the tab at the bottom, and that will go right into the lower of the two holes right here where it mounts in. You're just going to put that tab right there in the lower hole, and the bolt will go in the upper hole where the screw is, the nut that's welded in there, and that's where you're going to bolt that, and we'll attach those lines. It'll be a little hard to do this on camera for you guys, so I'm just going to do it and then we'll check back in. I just got the top installed, and I just wanted to give a tip real quick before I even begin the bottom. What I found was easiest is if I started hand twisting in the factory brake lines into your new ones, into your extended rear brake lines first by hand. You twist those in, and then after that you get those decently tight. Then I went ahead and started tightening them down with our flange or flare wrench. And after I got the flare wrench to tighten these down, not all the way, but pretty good, then I went ahead and installed the upper bracket completely. I bolted that in, and it helped guide these rear brake lines where they need to go up here, because they're kind of stiff and they're kind of bent out of place a little. So that kind of helped force them into place. And then from there I tightened these the rest of the way with that flare wrench, and now the top is completely done. So now all we have to do is work here on the bottom, get this bottom mount in, get the rear brake lines all lined up, twist it in. I'll probably do the same process that I did up top. I'll probably try twisting them by hand for a little bit, then tighten them down with the flare wrench. Then I'll bolt this into the axle, and once it's all tight right there and I put this clip back in, then I'll go ahead and use the flare wrench to tighten it the rest of the way and get it completely done. And then we'll be ready to bleed the brakes. And just like that, it's all installed. Just keep in mind, one tip that I found really helped is I started working on this lower one first without connecting this one at all. I just let it sit loose off to the side. I started doing this by hand, then I tightened it most of the way with the wrench, and then I started working on this one. Then I connected it in, then I started tightening it by hand. If you put this in, then when you're trying to do this one, it makes it really hard. This lower one is in a very inconvenient spot for wrenching, so make sure that you do that one first, the lower one, before you do this upper one. But once you get those in pretty tight and nice and good, then you're able to bolt this into place. One of the things I did early on was I undid this bolt right here to the ABS line, so that way it could be a little looser, or not the one to the ABS line, sorry, the one to this brake line, because it comes right there. And if you undo it right here, then it makes it so you can move that out a little ways. So just remember to put that back in afterwards once you've bolted this all back up. And once all the bolts, all three of them, are back in place and you've tightened up all your brake lines, 2 of your upper ones, 2 of your lower ones, now we're ready to bleed the brakes. Right here we have the rear brake on the driver's side, and what we're going to be dealing with is this is the bleeder. We're going to hook up our little self-bleeding kit and we'll try bleeding the brakes. Alright, so I have our bleeder system set up. We have the little bottle for brake fluid to go into. We've attached the hose right here. I have the wrench on already, so it's ready to open the valve. And once the valve is open, we should see some brake fluid come out. And then all you have to do is turn the FJ to the on position, not all the way on, but just to the on position on the key slot. And then from there you can press the brake pedal a few times, and that'll get all the brake fluid to start cycling again. And once there's no more air bubbles, that's when you know you're ready to go. Just make sure that you refill up your master cylinder, so that way you're not running air through the whole system. You want to make sure you always have fluid in your master cylinder. Alright, so the FJ is turned to on. I'm going to open this bleeder valve, and then I'm going to run up and press the brake pedal a couple times, and hopefully everything goes right and we don't leak anywhere. So I just ran back here to check on how it's doing. It looks like quite a bit cycled through that first time, but you can still see there's still lots of air bubbles. So we're gonna give it another pump. All right, so right there, it looks like we filled up our bottle quite a bit. This is where having a bigger bottle really helps. But I'm gonna refill the master cylinder real quick, empty this little bottle, and then we'll try it again. All right, we just refilled the master cylinder. I emptied the bottle. This is open again, so I'm gonna go press that brake pedal again. Looks to me like the fluid is starting to get a little clearer in the pipeline. There's still some air bubbles, so let's try a couple more pumps and hopefully that'll get all of that out of there. You always want the pipe to kind of go upwards, so that way air bubbles, if anything, they rise up into the pipeline or into the bottle versus going back into your system. I kind of brought a hook over here, just a little hanger hook, to hopefully find something to hook onto to help that process. Looks like all the air bubbles and fluid is pumped through the system. So now let's move and do the other side. All right, we're all set up on this side. I'm just gonna go fill up the master cylinder real quick. I've already hooked this up and already opened the bleeder. You can already see the fluid starting to leak into the pipe. I'll go fill up the master cylinder, pump the brake, and after this, we should be done. We can see how much more quicker this time was with the process. There's still some air bubbles coming out of the brake line. So I'm gonna empty this bottle, fill up the brake cylinder or master cylinder again, and then we'll keep pumping until there's no more air bubbles coming out. We're going to open this, just crack it a little bit. Already I can see some air bubbles coming through. I'm gonna hang that right there. Let me go push that brake pedal. I already filled up the master cylinder. Looks like we filled up that bottle quick. Luckily, the place where it decided to leak out the most was at the bottle, but it looks like there's no more air bubbles in the line, which is great. So all we have to do is tighten it back up, take off this bottle, empty it, and we should be done at this point. Just make sure that the master cylinder is all filled with brake fluid. Well guys, I just went and did a test drive with the brakes. Everything is feeling great. If there were still big air pockets in the system, it would feel like I had no brakes while braking. But luckily it's feeling just fine. Looks like we bled the brakes correctly. Thank you guys for watching. I know I'm not any sort of mechanic, and this took me about 3 hours with trying to record and figure out what I was doing in the first place, since this was kind of a mystery for me of what to do. But luckily everything is looking great. Hopefully you guys have even better success than I do, and hopefully have better tools than I do, especially when it comes to jacking up the car in the driveway. So good luck out there. If any of you guys are installing long travel, good luck, especially with that. And we'll catch you guys later. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, like, watch some of the other videos that are way more exciting of off-roading. But check back in the future, and hopefully we'll get some more content up for you soon. Thanks.